This next study tip is called, or I call it, the time traveler. And the purpose of this study method or philosophical or conceptual outlook is to think of things, is to think of yourself and to think about how useful or how well you understand something. Imagine you're an engineer or whatever your profession is, and you're in university and you've completed your degree or you've done your schooling. Or even right now, let's say your level of understanding, whatever grade you are, or whatever part of your life you are in. If you've studied something, then think of it this way. If you were sent back in time, let's say 500 years ago or 1,000 years ago, based on your understanding of the world now, or based on your understanding in whatever subject, could you become the most famous, the richest person that could possibly ever exist in history, going in the future from when you were sent back? Could you become the richest person with all these advanced knowledge that you know? So let's say you're an engineer, and you're a mechanical engineer, and let's say you have two people. Let's say you have yourself and you have another person. Let's say this other person just half-assed his education. He doesn't necessarily try to understand things on the deepest level, or try to understand things for himself, or he could possibly maybe teach to someone else if all the books were eradicated, or he was sent back in time. Now, if this person has a very superficial or very surface level understanding and they're sent back in time, they might not necessarily be rich or famous because they couldn't explain to all these primitive people all this advanced knowledge that they learned in school. But let's say you were to actually spend time understanding things very deeply for yourself, and you were able to translate the knowledge that you learned to other people, then in some sense, you could become the richest, most famous, the smartest person in history that's ever lived, because you could take all this knowledge that you've learned and be able to invent or create or pass down or write books about everything that you've learned. So I call this the time traveler method. The purpose is it's kind of a game. You want to see if you can become the most useful person that's ever lived in history that could be sent back into time. So this method is the time traveler. So you always have to, every time, let's say every so often, you test yourself. Do I understand? If I was sent back in time, could I maybe explain this subject which I'm learning now, or I learned? And if you can't, then you say, okay, well, I have some weaknesses. I haven't learned at a sufficient level well enough to explain this to someone else, or to be the inventor of this if I was sent back in time. So try this method out. This keeps you kind of honest. And so yeah.